Taking notes during class is the way I got by in school without having to do any homework. I am the typical procrastinating student who considered minimal effort the best effort. I preferred rushing notes in class than taking them at home, especially during online class conferences when the number of projects I had to turn in per class skyrocketed. I would write my notes down while the teacher spoke rather than taking screenshots of the slides because I knew I wouldn't rewrite them if I could help it. Hey everybody, this is Anna from Class of Anna and at Study Hard Anna, and welcome to another video. Today's video will be about how I used to take my notes. It took me 100 videos on note-taking methods and asking people at my school for advice, but I finally found the most efficient way to take organized, clear notes in class while also being able to pay attention. This is not a very revolutionary method, but it is what helped me keep my schoolwork in check without having to spend more time in school than necessary. Fortunately, but due to COVID-19, I know that a lot of the people stumbling upon this video won't be able to take notes during class. However, if you have online classes and are required to use a video conference app, this will work just fine. I am mainly making this video because I am no longer enrolled in school and I want to share what helped me survive building up to the exam season. I will make another video later on how I make my notes while I'm homeschooling, so please stay tuned to that. Without further ado, transition. When I used to go to junior high, my bag would be filled to the brim with mineliners and markers and different colored pens. I was determined enough to convince myself that aesthetically pleasing notes were the best kind of notes. But this changed with my evolution into high school. At first, I used regular notebooks and later switched to dotted notebooks and a little bit of white paper. Now that I have learned from all my previous mistakes, I would recommend using a binder with regular lined paper the most. This helps a lot because you have all of your classes in the same place. And whenever you start a new unit, you could throw all of the previous notes into these plastic separators to keep just in case and to prioritize the unit you will have to study for in upcoming exams. Also, you will never run out of notebook space as long as you keep a reserve of lined paper. In the case that your teacher asks to grade your notes, which happened to me at one point in Spanish class, you could throw your notes into the same plastic separators I told you about, add a sticker with your name and information on it, and voila! It is also a lot easier for teachers to grade, or at least that's what I've been told. For writing utensils, I would recommend only the essentials. At the start, I would use Muji and Pilot gel pens, but later found it inconvenient because the ink would smudge if I tried to highlight over the writing. Regular or ballpoint pens work just fine. I always have black, blue, and red ink pens, 2 mineliners in different colors, and 2 Crayola markers that match. I would also carry a white gel pen and whiteout and a tumblr calligraphy pen for mistakes and decoration. Of course, the tumblr calligraphy pen is completely optional, but since the pack cost me less than $1, I just had to buy it. And you can also exchange mineliners with regular highlighters. In the case of exams, I would carry a mechanical pencil, lead, and an eraser, but I didn't use these daily. Something that I find funny now is that I used to keep all of my material together with an elastic and carried it around in my binder. If I wanted, I wouldn't have to bring a backpack to school. Talk about lazy. I didn't have to do much but open my binder as soon as I got into class, and since I kept all of my lined paper up front, I didn't have to look for anything but the motivation to stay and not skip class. But that's beside the point, isn't it? I'm quite fast at calligraphy now, so I didn't have to take very long to write a title. If the teacher were an asshole though, I would just jot down the title on my arm and come back to letter it whenever there was a pause in class. Depending on my mood, I would write the title down with my Tombow pen or with a Crayola marker. Sometimes I would decorate it with the white gel pen I brought, but if you're a bit new to calligraphy or are just lacking motivation, big block letters and a colored marker are flashy enough for you to spot anytime. For me, the purpose for a flashy and pretty title is not only to have something pleasing to look at, although that is normally the reason I do it, but it is also so that I can take a mental picture of my notes and remember it while on an exam. I'll come back to this later when I am talking about taking notes with diagrams or tables, but the way that I memorize things is by finding the most striking pieces in my notes and remembering the information that was in it. Having a flashy title helps me identify what the information belongs to. For example, a date or names that happened during a specific historical event, which will naturally be the big title in bold, flashy letters at the top of the page. For the information that you actually have to write down, the most obvious piece of advice that I have for you is for you to base yourself off from the presentations. Most of my classes work that way, and the teacher normally explains the same things that you see on the presentation. Some teachers will dictate what you have to write down in your notebook or on your notes, but since there are a lot of people who normally ask the teacher to repeat themselves, it is a lot easier to take notes in this situation. Now, during my summer coming up to my semester, I would literally practice writing as quickly as I could so that I would get used to it and have comprehensible handwriting. This is so that I would write the presentations quickly and also have time to dedicate my attention to what the teacher was saying. It also worked to my advantage because I would have some free minutes before the slide changed, which I would use to participate more in class. I write my notes down in bullets, as is the norm, especially when you're copying off the PowerPoints. I do my regular text in black ink, concepts in blue, and subheaders and examples in red. I would also highlight important parts of definitions or of the regular text, but I would exclusively highlight if the text was in black ink. Also, if the teacher ever mentioned anything that was interesting and it was not on the PowerPoint, I would write it in the margins with a red pen. It is also important for you to make your notes as concise as possible, so before you go and write the information down, quickly read and assess what the most important parts of the text are. This is so that you can better understand the content and simplify it so that it is easier to come back and study if you ever do it. This is actually a lazy student hack. Once you assess the information and write it down, it is easier for you to remember later on without studying because you actually processed it before you wrote it down, so it sticks. If you are more of a visual learner, or if your page is looking a bit clogged from all of the info, do diagrams. I would use tables if we needed to compare two or more concepts or to define them if they belong to the same topic. I would fold the paper in half starting from the margin, and that's how I got a perfectly split table. Also, when you're writing a subheader, you should probably add a banner and a drop shadow so that it is even easier to identify. And again, so that it is easier to take a mental picture of it. Your pages should always look a little bit different, even if you're using the same method throughout your notes. This way, you can start developing your photographic memory, and believe me, it works. It worked for me, and due to my mental health and bad habits, I have very bad long-term memory. But this is what you gotta do to survive. Is it possible to keep all of this in mind while also being able to pay attention in class? Why? Well, yeah, the answer is yes. I didn't want to sound so pretentious, so yes, the answer is yes. I don't know about you guys, but I developed a skill in which I would have listened to what the teacher was saying during the class while also being able to write down within the PowerPoint without making any mistakes. And this is a process that is split in two parts and is probably only possible if you are able to multitask and if you are already familiar with the color coding system that you want to use. This doesn't mean that it isn't a skill that you can't acquire. The first step is zoning out. And I know it is a bit weird, but trust me. You only zone out while you are reading the part that you want to rewrite in your notes. You read it, you assess it, and you memorize it. And this shouldn't take you more than 10 seconds. This is where you stop zoning out and try to listen to the teacher as much as humanly possible. So this is the second step, in which you have to treat your hand as a separate entity with a memory of its own. It is a bit difficult as well, but you're gonna be able to do it. I know you are. You have to be able to distinguish what is coming into your ears from what you are writing down. And this is a process that I like to call discrimination. You don't pay much attention to what your hand is doing, although you actually acknowledge it's there. You are splitting your attention, not in half, but probably 1/8 of it is focused on what you are writing. You should practice it with YouTube videos first so that you don't mess up in class though, but I assure you that as soon as you get the hang of it and you perfect this technique, you will improve your class performance considerably. Remember what I said about practicing writing faster? Well, this is where it becomes most useful. As soon as you finish writing the entire slide in your notes, you're able to sit back and pay more attention in class, or pay attention in class. And I beg you with my entire heart, even if you are a very introverted person like myself, please do participate. Whatever that is inside your head, just raise your hand and say it. If you're not sure what you want to say is correct, or if it is relevant to the conversation, you can formulate it as a question like, is it true that this happened? Or I heard that, and I swear it will make you feel so much better about participating, even if you're not actually trying too hard. Besides, the more that you make yourself visible in class, the more the teacher will like you. Which reminds me, please make eye contact with your teacher. This will make them think that you're invested in their explanation when you are probably not. This is something that you can use strategically to your advantage when asking for extra credit or for a deadline extension. As you can probably tell, my lazy student techniques are about preparation, about acquiring new skills that you can upgrade later, like video games. When you upgrade these skills, it is easier to cruise through and not actually having to work harder to get good grades. Of course, I recommend going the extra mile and actually studying, but basically this is what I did. I didn't really turn homework in, which was detrimental to my grades, but I survived, and that's what counts. You can also message me on any social media accounts, which I'll leave in the description below if you want to be friends. Thank you for watching. I don't have an outro yet, but thank you.